So admittedly, it might be a little bit early to be thinking about tailgate season, given I just had to dig out my smoker to even be able to make today's video. But what has me excited is a year and a half ago, I threw a wish into the barbecue wishing well when I was reviewing the Meat Minder probe that I had installed on my Kamado Joe Big Joe, and at the time, I said it would be interesting if it did a couple things other than just be a digital dome gauge along with some wired probes. If it had wireless probes and it had a temperature control fan, it might actually be onto something. And it's actually my Weber Smokey Mountain that is our tailgate powerhouse. When we pop down to Buffalo for a Bills game, the Smokey Mountain is a great companion. Not only does it come apart in 3 pieces, it cools off quickly, it fits under the tonneau cover. There's a lot to love about it. And the idea of potentially being able to actually upgrade it with maybe a dome gauge that actually works, along with wireless probes and a control fan, so we can go enjoy the tailgate festivities and not have to fuss with any of the temperature control and actually fully enjoy our day. It has me interested. So without further ado, let me show you how we're going to set up all the ChefsTemp gear along with the details on what it is we're going to be smoking for today's tailgate trial run. So this is the ChefsTemp Breezo fan. I've already removed the nut and bolt here so I can install the spring clip, which I can tell has lots of tension, so that's going to be a joy to get through the other side of the hole. I'm also going to remove the damper just for now, since I will end up probably popping that off. I don't want to damage it while I get to work, but let me take you fast forward while I install this. And ChefsTemp also includes some ducting tape so that I can seal off the other hole, so we make sure that we get all the airflow from our fan, not from any additional sources. Okay, and with a pair of pliers, that was actually much easier than I've seen some other folks trying to get that in. So I just squeeze them, pop them through on the other side, and they spring out. So now all I have to do is seal off those holes, and we're going to leave our other dampers completely closed. Grab our tape, place some smoking wood chunks at the bottom, add some Fogo, grab our Grill Blazer grill gun, start our fire. Once we've got white ashed over coals, we're good to keep going. This, by the way, is the Hunsaker Vortex basket that I picked up for my Smokey Mountain. Drop that in. Midsection of our Smokey Mountain. And our dome. Hard to see here, but remove our stock dome gauge wing nut, like so. So I mentioned it was cold, so cold in fact, my battery went dead and I didn't notice. So everything after we had our Weber Smokey Mountain starting to come together, there's no audio. So let me recap you on the important details. I was able to install my ProTemp S1 using the wing nut. That goes on really easy, just like the OEM replacement comes out. That was about a 1-minute job and we had everything ready to go. I am powering everything today using my ProTemp 2 Plus, as this is what I would plan to do off-grid, where I don't have an extension cord or external power. And so far, this is working wonderfully. So I've got the included USB-C cable running from my ProTemp 2 Plus into the Breezo fan. That is now starting to come up to the set temperature of 270 degrees Fahrenheit that I've got everything set for, and it is working really well. And this is what I want to test, even in extreme cold conditions, as it would hopefully be much nicer the next time we are doing this in a tailgate situation. For our pork, perhaps today's snowstorm overnight with 15 inches of fresh powder is to blame, but grocery stores did not have any pork shoulders, picnic roast, or anything like that that I could go for the normal cut. So instead, what I found is a half center loin along with sirloin, sort of a large roast. It looks like a pork belly, but it's not a pork belly. Nonetheless, it had some really nice marbling and a fat cap. So I'm gonna try that, even though that's not my normal cut for pulled pork. We'll see how it goes. After I got the pork scored with my knife so I can get some of that seasoning down inside, we seasoned all sides, installed our wireless ProTemp 2 Plus, and we are ready to get everything onto our Smokey Mountain, start cooking. Again, I've set the Breezo set temp to 270 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'll rejoin you a little bit later once I've got dexterity back in the fingers and some batteries charged, so we hopefully don't lose audio again. I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so first impressions, and maybe you can't tell, but the grill is now cold. That's because I have our pork off and resting, and it is just minutes away from being able to dive in just in the nick of time as we are losing daylight. But I want to give you a quick update in terms of how did the S1, the ProTemp Plus, along with the Breezo fan system perform in terms of our expectations of what it would do to turn our Weber Smokey Mountain into perhaps the ultimate tailgating machine. But first, let me catch you up to speed on everything you missed since I last saw you. So once our pork reached an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit, I transitioned to a foil boat. This cut, as I mentioned, is a little bit unfamiliar to me in the sense of what I would normally go for a pulled pork. And so I didn't want to risk drying that out. And so by putting it in the foil boat, my hope here is that we're able to save some of that fat that's being rendered out and help make a juicier and more tender shred when we get it out of the hot hold in a couple minutes. I mentioned the hot hold. I continued to let it cook up to just about 200, 201 degrees, and it was just shy of probing perfect with my ChefsTemp X10. So what I was looking for there is the feel of room temperature butter, and this was maybe one butter that had been out of the refrigerator for a little bit, but wasn't quite exactly what I wanted. And since I'm going to have it in my oven at 150 degrees Fahrenheit for just over 2 hours, my hope here is that I'm going to get some of that final tenderness. If we were doing this overnight, we would back off into the 190 to 195 degree Fahrenheit. So I took it just a little bit shy of where I think it would have been probing tender. Based on the feel of this roast, we're probably in the 204, 205, maybe max 207 is where the perfect tenderness would have been. Every roast would be different. So that's why, again, don't go for a temperature, go for feel. And something like the ChefsTemp X10 gives us not only the information in different spots around the roast, but also the feel that I was looking for. And this was just shy of perfect. So we'll find out soon enough if that was the right decision. So coming back to some first impressions on the S1, the Breezo fan, along with the ProTemp, how did everything perform? Well, earlier in the cook, I mentioned I lost you, or more, I should say, I lost audio due to the cold weather. So I'm just sitting above 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and I had a battery issue on my base station for the ProTemp. This was fully charged when we started, but as I got towards the end of my cook, I started to get an alert that we were low on battery. And so at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, we are just about a few degrees warmer than the minimum temperature, which I think was -4 degrees Fahrenheit. But this greatly reduced my battery time. Whether it was, sort of wirelessly getting the probe data, the S1 held its charge no problem, but where the issue was powering the fan. And so I did have to hook up the second power supply. If you can see here, on the back of the Breezo fan, there's not only room to connect it to be able to be powered from the base station, but if you need an external power supply, you can add a second USB cable. So I did need to add that to finish our cook. Something to watch for, I'm hoping, as the weather gets warmer, that we get the advertised battery life. Otherwise, color me impressed that this system worked really well. Not only do we get a nice, easy to read display without needing to rely on my smartphone, so not an issue today as I'm inside and I want to be using my smartphone versus spending any extra spare time out here. But if you were walking by, it's really easy to see the gauge. And then the Breezo fan, I've tested a whole bunch a year or so ago when I did a smart fan battle. I read a couple people saying it's quite loud. This to me is sort of par for the course, right where all those fans were from a decibel level. I didn't have any issue with the audio volume, and more importantly, the algorithm did an admirable job figuring out no matter where I set the temperature at 270 or bumping it up to 300 degrees Fahrenheit to finish our cook, it did a great job. So first impressions so far on the system working outside of the cold weather robbing me a little bit of battery life, I think it did amazing. But we will find out if it was actually amazing as we shred our pork. So let's move over to the kitchen, shred it up, and to prevent everything from freezing, I'll get a little sample plate, take it back inside for family dinner so it doesn't completely go ice cold, and we'll see if our taste test matches our first impressions. Okay, so I pulled this out of the oven. You don't have to use an oven, it's just really cold. My coolers were in the garage, and so they are frozen shut as well. Normally, you could just do foil, towel, cooler. For anything under 4 hours, you don't really need the assistance of an oven. And so if everything wasn't frozen, that's what I would normally do for a short rest like this. Let's get it out. Whew, it certainly smells good. Got a little sample plate here. I'll get everything else inside. Let's get rid of our boat. falling apart already. I haven't even started to shred that. And just lifting it up. We're definitely tender. That's a good sign. All right, let's see how it shreds. Looks good. Nice bark, nice smoke, lots of color on there. Tender. For not a pork shoulder, this center cut or half center cut and sirloin certainly looks like a convincing pulled pork so far. Set some aside for a sample, and I'm going to get the rest in before family dinner cools off. Cheers. Hasn't completely frozen on me yet. You would never know this is not a shoulder. Amazing. That bark has money. Wow, that's fantastic. Bark's amazing, smoke's amazing. But those are all reasons that I love the Smokey Mountain for tailgating. But compared to the Kamados that I'm normally cooking on, something like fire management on the Smokey Mountain can be a little bit more precarious. Not to the point where it's absolutely runaway fires. We have some extra height and things to protect from being too close to the fire like that. But not so much so. This is the type of thing that I'd wander away for hours at a time and have the same degree of confidence in fire management versus the Kamado style grills that I'm used to, or even my offset, now that I can leave that for hours without needing to add some wood splits. But the Smokey Mountain kettles can be a little bit more sensitive, particularly in cold weather like this. Those issues are gone with the ChefsTemp system, and I think that's exactly what I was hoping that they would do, is in an event like a tailgate or a party where I want to spend more time doing something other than just worrying about what it is that I'm cooking and not necessarily have to sacrifice amazing barbecue. We got some amazing barbecue and I didn't have to do any of the work. So again, colored me impressed with the S1 ProTemp and the Breezo combination to be able to take an analog grill and add a little bit of luxury convenience. Honestly, if we were to price this out, something like a Smokey Mountain and the Breezo fan, I'm not even sure why a pellet grill necessarily makes sense, because I think I can get way more flavor at a fraction of the cost of some of the more popular brands. This worked incredibly well. Let me know if there's something else you'd like to see me test the S1, the Breezo fan, or the ProTemp products on. Let me know down in the comments. I'll be sure to add that to my upcoming content requests. Or if you got a question sort of that doesn't fit the mold, be sure to jump on the next Members Live. I go live once a month and can answer your questions in a real-time format versus these pre-recorded videos. That's it for today, though. I'm James from Smoky Dad Barbecue signing off. Remember, don't be afraid to fire it up and warm up. I'm inside.